गुड इवनिंग फ्रेंड्स, जय हिंद दोस्तों। मैं हूं मेजर मोहम्मद अली शाह और हमें वो बहुत खुशी हो रही है। आई एम गोइंग टू बी इन कॉन्वर्सेशन विद अ वेरी वेरी illustrious general of the Indian Army, who's been a former Army commander of the R-Track, that is the Army Training and the Training Command, and he is the member of the UPSC. Yes, we all dream of cracking UPSC sometime. He's had a very very illustrious career spanning over 4 decades, and we will be in conversation with him on leadership, on India's leadership legacy, and on leadership. So we cannot have a greater leader, a person who knows on ground, who has led men in battlefield, in counterinsurgency, because he commanded his regiment, a medium regiment in the northeast. Thereafter, he took it to the desert in the western sector. He's commanded a brigade, a division, fighting counterinsurgency, and of course the Army Training Command. And I can just go on further and further and talking about General Raj Shukla. Of course, he needs no introduction at all. But let me pass on the mic to him. Sir, thank you very much for taking our time, sir. Jai Hind, sir.
Yes, so good evening, Ali. Good evening to you and all your viewers. It's wonderful to be a part of this conversation on the saga and legacy of India's military leadership. That is what we have chosen to
Correct, sir.
label the conversation, is it? Yes, the saga and legacy of India's military leadership. So you
Sir,
want me to say a few things or you?
your leadership qualities, sir, you studied at the Sainik School, Lucknow, and then you went to NDA, IMA, and of course, you've done so many courses you held, staff and command appointments. So tell me, what, according to you, does leadership actually mean? Because a lot of people talk about leadership. According to you, what is leadership like?
So see, in my personal opinion, uh, leadership is an extremely critical virtue or a very critical metric. It does not pass any easy definition. I mean, you can't say that these are set of qualities will make somebody a good leader because human beings are unique. But there is something about leadership that separates the men from the boys. There are some characters, and some are absolutely rudimentary, and some are more complex. So the rudimentary attributes would be honesty, leading by example, sincerity, diligence. It would also mean intelligence. It would mean wisdom, which is beyond merely information and knowledge. It would mean your ability to judge people and situations. So it's a amalgam of many qualities. Leadership also has to be fine tuned to the circumstance and the challenge. There are times you need, you know, leaderships of thought and change. So I'll quote the Prime Minister. For a while, he's been telling the army commanders that things like gallantry, valor, all these things are important. But equally, you need leaders who can drive change through the national security system. Now, I may be a very good leader in sustaining the efficient status quo, but to bring about change, to change the status quo, you will need a different set of attributes. So, leadership is very difficult to define, yet it is that one quality which separates the men from the boys. It, it defines success and failure. So, it is something that you have to imbibe on your own, gradually, by looking around you, by reading biographies, by seeing people around you, uh, having a sharp historical sense. Say, in my profession, studying campaigns, studying battles, all that you do when you absorb from life, from in general, becomes what people call a hunch, a sixth sense. And that hunch and that sixth sense enables you, as you go along your career and your life, to to come to the right choices. And if you make the right choice, you're a good leader. If you make the wrong choice, you will perhaps fade out as a bad leader. So I mean, would be dishonest if I can give you a very precise definition, because leadership eludes a precise definition. But one thing I would tell you, that the best sparring partner for a good leader is adversity. There is no better nursery than adversity. And there is a wonderful Urdu couplet which says, कि तुंडइये मुख्तलिफ, the adverse wind, तुंडइये मुख्तलिफ से ना घबराए काब. The poet is telling the bird that fear not the adverse wind, तुंडइये मुख्तलिफ से ना घबराए काब, ये तो आया है तुझे और ऊंचा उड़ाने के लिए. It comes to
Wow,
waft you even higher.
wow.
So, leadership is an extremely complex thing. You learn by and by. But in the ultimate analysis, leadership, as I said, separates the men from the boys. It differentiates between success and failure. And there are all kinds of leadership. The leadership attributes you would expect from a captain would be very different from what you expect from a general. Generalship demands an entirely different set of virtues. Uh, in your younger years, you are a different kind of leader. So leadership is also the ability to evolve. You can't be stagnant. And so that is leadership in my view.
Very true, sir. So the example you gave of the leadership of a captain and of a general, very well brought out by you, sir. But before we go ahead on the leadership of a captain and a general, I would like to say something, sir. Sir, I did not know आप इतनी अच्छी उर्दू बोलते हैं with proper नुक्ता, proper तलफ़ुज़, मतलब एक एक हर्फ आपका इतना क्लियर था, सर. वाकई में मेरे को अंदाजा बिल्कुल नहीं था इसके बारे में, सर. और that's really. So, speaking on this, sir, do you think leadership also, I have observed many great leaders have a quality of being a great orator. They all speak very well. How much do you attribute that quality to a leader, sir?
So see, communications is important, but communications is not just being glib. सिर्फ अच्छी अंग्रेजी बोलने से या शुद्ध हिंदी बोलने से you don't become a good leader. So communications must be authentic. I'll give you an example. So when I was doing staff college, way back, must be in the 90s, we had a lot of people. Staff college gets the best speakers. So those days, from Robela Thapar to Veer Sangvi to Arun Shore, we had a galaxy of speakers. But I still recall that one gentleman who got a standing ovation was Rajesh Pilot, Sachin Pilot's father. He was not very glib in his English. In fact, some of his English was grammatically incorrect. But he spoke from the heart. As you know, somebody said, कि सर से लेकर पैर के नाखूनों तक वो सिर्फ दिल ही दिल था. He was heart. He spoke so much from the heart. He was the Minister of State for Home Affairs. That when it concluded, I mean, people gave him a standing ovation. He narrated things like, his very humble beginnings. He said that the house that he was staying somewhere in Lutyens, Delhi, was the same house where his father delivered milk. He was a milk man or a milk boy. So in many of the instances he narrated then, and the way he spoke about what we should do to meet the challenge of Kashmir then. So one, it is about being natural. It is being authentic. I'll give you another example. So Atal Bihari Vajpayee is this great communicator. So, my parents would tell me that he's this great communicator in Hindi. I never had occasion to see him. But there's this journalist, Tableen Singh. She's written this in a book, and she also narrated this incident when she came to the Army War College where I was the commandant. And she was talking of Vajpayee's communication skills. So this incident tells you what communications really is. So the story that she narrated was that Mr. Vajpayee, then in the opposition, is released from prison after the emergency. And he is going to address the first election meeting straight from jail. And Tableen, the journalist, is accompanying him. So Tableen asks him, कि वाजपेयी साहब आज क्या कहेंगे आप? So he tells her कि Tableen अभी सोचा नहीं. And Tableen observes that he doesn't have a pen or paper. He's just gathering his thoughts perhaps. And when he's about when he reaches the venue, just before he alights from the car, he tells Tavleen ki Tavleen aaj ek kavita se shuru karenge. It turns out to be a couplet, but he says kavita. And Tavleen says, I wonder this gathering of 1 lakh or so, whatever, you know, all kinds of people. It's a place close to Delhi. And she says that, there are laborers, there are rickshaw pullers, there are the people from the agricultural world, that kind of audience. So, kavita kya samjhenge? But look at this man, Vajpayee. He senses the moment, the audience, and the narration. And what does he say? Emergency, denial of freedoms. So he says, Badi muddat se mile hain deewane. You are mad at Indira Gandhi because she's denied you freedoms. I'm also mad at her. Or you are mad because of the denial of your freedoms. I'm mad at Indira Gandhi. Bade muddat se mile hain deewane. Kehne sunne ko bade hain afsane. We have many stories to tell. And now look at the punchline. Khuli hawa mein jara samajh to le le. Kab tak rahe azadi kaun jane. So what was he doing? He was connecting the moment, the grievances of the audience, denial of rights, and he was stirring that emotion in them that you have been denied your fundamental rights. Do not forget your tormentor. And Tavleen says that with each line of that couplet, the applause began and it grew louder and louder, and when it stopped, I knew that a prime minister had been born. Now, this is complex. Communication is very complex. Of course, the ability to communicate, think clearly, all these things help. But primarily, it is about authenticity, your ability to be authentic.
Right,
so,
sir.
Yeah, so that
Sir,
is.
and as you very correctly said, sir, अंग्रेजी बोलना एक अलग चीज है, हिंदी बोलना अलग चीज है, मराठी बोलना अलग चीज है, अपनी भाषा में आप समझा रहे हो अलग चीज है. But I want to ask you about the point of being an effective communicator. So अगर मैं अच्छी अंग्रेजी बोलता हूँ, उसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि I am a good orator. अगर मैं अच्छी हिंदी बोलता हूँ, like I'll give you an example. There are two politicians without getting into political ideology. एक अंग्रेजी बहुत अच्छी बोलते हैं, मगर मास्टर उनसे कनेक्ट नहीं कर पाते हैं. दूसरे सब बहुत अच्छा बढ़िया हिंदी बोलते हैं. एक मास ये ग्रास रूट में हर कोई उनसे कनेक्ट कर पाता है. So, and my observation has been that be it Lord Montgomery, be it Napoleon Bonaparte, be it, why not be it Adolf Hitler, and be it anyone, be it MacArthur, all these great military leaders, they had the ability to orate very well, where they could lead crowds to do anything for them. So, how important do you think, if a person is a good orator, he can be a good leader? Do you think so?
No, of course. So communications is beyond oratory. Communications is your ability to express yourself either in print or by way of voice or by way of addressing large gatherings, small gatherings, ability to do a briefing. But each would need intelligent appreciation of the audience, what you wish to convey, what you wish to persuade the audience with. So you have to, apart from getting your facts right, apart from getting the narration right, you have to see what has to be told. So I'm not trying to undermine the importance of communication. I'm saying communications is hugely important. अब आप अच्छी हिंदी बोलते हैं, अगर if you speak good English, if your diction is right, your pronunciation is right, it helps. But if you are not authentic, it is mere accent, then of course it will be of no use. But if you can put this whole thing together, it is extremely important. And especially mid-career upwards, I mean purely from the professional point of view, you have your thoughts, but they are within you. Anybody who has to judge you will judge you based on how you communicate those thoughts. So that will be on your written skills, communication skills, verbal skills. So communications is of course an art. And while skills matter, in the initial part I was merely emphasizing the point that authenticity is equally important. Sometimes, being glib is mistaken to be good communications. That will not sell in the long run. You have to be authentic. Authenticity will come when people relate to you. They know that what you're saying is honest, that you practice what you preach. It's a complex web. It's not to undermine the importance of communications, but to emphasize that communications is such a huge challenge. You have to get so many things right if you are to be, and see, there are so many aspects of communication. What you refer to is personal communications. Societies need a story, nations need a story, what we call narration. There is that good saying that unless the lions have their own historians, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. So everybody needs a story. The lion needs a story, the hunter needs a story. That is the narrative. Look at China. This whole charade of a peaceful rise is a wonderful depiction of strategic deception in statecraft. So it is a narration, a very skillful narration, which is due much of the world. When today we talk of a Viksit Bharat and Vishwa Guru, I mean, it's a positive narration. It's a narration to say that, okay, our moment has come. It doesn't mean that you rest on your laurels, but if you handle things carefully from here and after, there is a chance that we can become a nation to reckon with, a developed country. And if we are a little more ambitious and we can get other things right, perhaps a Vishwaguru, which is what? Which is not to jackboot around the world, but a Vishwaguru means a nation with economic primacy, technological prowess, strong strategic military posture, and also a net idea, exporter of ideas and best practices. So communications has got some fundamental virtues and they have got huge objectives, right? From your personal space to statecraft, communications is it's extremely important.
Very true. So, एक बात आपने बहुत खूब कही that you got to be authentic, which means speak from the heart. I will tell you this. Just yesterday, I was speaking to a very renowned, internationally renowned professional speaker who travels in various countries on private jets and he speaks. And people, he has a huge following. So कल उनसे बात हुई थी. So he said, please send me a list of questions that you would be asking me. And मेरे जहन में आया that won't it get too structured and too mechanical? I said, okay, ठीक है, हम कर लेंगे. When I approached you, sir, you was very kind and gracious and generous. You said, okay, we'll do it. And this is a subject, we will speak on it. And this is what I meant. I try to explain people that, when you speak from your heart, it connects. But the moment it comes, prashan, uttar, question, answers, it goes, sir, आप इतनी अच्छी उर्दू बोलते हैं, sir. Do you attribute it to your upbringing in Lucknow?
Oh yes, see, Lucknow was a marvelous city. When I was growing up in Lucknow, I studied in two schools there. I was in La Martiniere first and then I went to Sainik School. The academic standards in Lucknow were extraordinarily high. I remember La Martiniere, St. Francis, even Sainik School then. He had some of the best minds. They went through not only the defense services, the administrative services, the judiciary. One of my classmates is a judge in the Supreme Court, the other is in the IAS. It had a very strong academic grounding with some wonderful teachers. And we always challenged ourselves to perform. And Lucknow, by its very nature, it was multilingual. So Hindi भी बड़ी अच्छी बोलते थे लोग, बड़ी शुद्ध हिंदी बोलते थे. And if you also get to follow Hindi, it is also a great language. For example, Chanakya. Look at this. Let me give you this example. We talk of realism in foreign affairs, and we quote Kissinger and Morgenthau and Mersheimer. India में धारणा है कि India is primarily a land of spiritual thinkers. Not true. Some of the finest strategic minds. Look at Chanakya. If you believe in the realist school of foreign policy, look at his clarity. He says, अगर शास्त्र को भूलोगे तो संस्कृति खो दोगे. If you forget your cultural texts, you will lose your culture. पर अगर शस्त्र का त्याग करोगे, the instrument of force, शस्त्र, तो राष्ट्र ही खो दोगे. Now, if you believe in the realist school of foreign policy, he's telling you how civilizational wisdom, not religious civilizational wisdom, is so important to the growth of a country. And it also tells you that in international affairs, the international system is very unforgiving. It is extremely intolerant of weaknesses. The only arbiter is power. And if the only arbiter is power, make sure that your instrument of force is pretty central to your strategic calculus. बट उसी चीज को दो लाइनों में हिंदी में कितनी खूबसूरती से पेश किया है. Urdu is even more remarkable. The ability to condense life's wisdom, a lifetime's wisdom, in two lines is, I mean, profound. For example, if humility is a good quality, and it should be, you should pinch yourself every time you rise in life because the mightiest have fallen. Look at this exchange between Akbar and Birbal. They say that Akbar chose Birbal as one of the few Hindu courtiers in a predominantly Mughal court. And the reason was because he spoke truth to power. Whenever Akbar would grow too big for his boots, he would remind him ever so politely कि तुमसे पहले जो शख्स यहाँ नदीम था उसे भी अपना खुदा होने का यकीन था. So never let godliness get into you. So ये जो culture था लखनऊ का, it was a very easy going culture. I attribute much of my success to that great city. Look at the emphasis on all-round development. I remember my chemistry teacher, a gentleman called Agarwal, would tell you on a Friday afternoon कि ये बहुत हो गई chemistry. ये लो शेक्सपियर पढ़ के आओ, मंडे को शेक्सपियर डिस्कस करेंगे. A chemistry teacher inspiring you to read Shakespeare. Have you seen this? You heard of Vishal Bharadwaj?
I've worked with him. I've acted with him in his film. I've acted with him in his film. In his film, sir. मैंने एक्टिंग करी है. उस पिक्चर को 5 नेशनल अवार्ड भी मिले. So he has done Othello as Omkara, even Makbul as Macbeth, Hamlet, Heather.
I was coming to that. He's from the Hindi belt. His English is not glib, but his understanding of Shakespeare is so profound. I'm told the Shakespearean Society in London has wondered that how does this man from the Hindi belt understand Shakespeare so well? So these are the marvels of these smaller towns, the depths of academic discipline. And so since you asked, I'm a very proud UPite and I'm even prouder Lucknowite. It was a great city which gave you these virtues.
That is so nice to hear, sir. So getting back to the strategy of a captain who's a platoon commander and a general who would be an army commander. The leadership is so different in both the situations. And because an army commander would be more into strategy and a platoon commander would focus more on tactics and such things. And when you spoke about Chanakya, sir, there's a senior of mine you must be familiar with, of course, Major Gaurav Arya. He has named his entire thing as Chanakya Forum, where Major Gaurav Arya and I joined him to do the Chanakya Forum conclave just about 10 days back, sir. And with the CDS had graced us with the chief guest. So, and you were so right, like say Sun Tzu, the Chinese strategist. Again, he's how to win war without fighting. The acme of a military general is to win war without fighting. So how much do you agree with that quote? The acme of a military general is to win war without fighting. Sun Tzu's philosophy, sir.
See, I mean, that is one part of it, but we would be oversimplifying it if we say that, there will be no war fighting. Of course, what he says is absolutely right. For example, if you can win wars without fighting, it is extremely wise. But there are, wider aspects to this. For example, deterrence. Now, what is deterrence? Deterrence is creating military capacities so that your adversary, when he is seizing you up and is thinking of committing aggression, all the indicators tell him that don't. That is simply put deterrence. Now, deterrence is expensive, but while most nations are hesitant to spend for deterrence, they always forget that wars are even more expensive. Look at Ukraine. So the question in Ukraine really is that why did the West fail to deter Putin? And not why did Putin attack? I mean, that's a larger question, but why did you fail to deter Putin? So one is that you invest in your instruments of force to deter. Now, what Sun Tzu and all say, if you can alter geopolitical realities without firing a shot, which the Chinese have done with some measure in the East China Sea, South China Sea, and so forth, it of course makes sense. So that is, civil military fusion, fusing all elements of statecraft. So of course it makes sense. Here you see you have to differentiate between the Clausewitzian school and the Sun Tzu schools of thought, or the Chinese schools of thought. And here we must learn a little from the Chinese. Clausewitz, is for this clear demarcations between war and peace. So when peace fails, you employ force in an all-out manner. And Clausewitz says, trickery, deception, these are weapons of the weak. Sun Tzu says they are weapons of choice. What does the Yuddhakandam say? Sam, Dam, Dand, Ved. In this strategic policy, foreign policy sense, is national interest by means fair or foul? Fair or foul, I emphasize. So if your statecraft, you accumulate it in such a manner that of course it is serviced by instrument of force, but by other things like diplomacy, how you conduct your affairs with nations around you, economic hard power, so on and so forth, and you can develop, say, prowess in persuasion or coercion, depending on the diplomatics that you choose. And if you can force adversary to change his behavior without fighting, why not? But that should come in the hope that you will change his behavior without fighting. And if you can't do it, you are not prepared to, meet a hard response. So in principle, I agree with you, but every nation must have a fine-tuned, calibrated instrument of force. That's as the Prime Minister says again, Shanti ki chah or Shakti ki rah, bhin nahi hai. They are the same. The road to power and the road to peace, they converge. If you are powerful, you will ensure peace. So that's how I would look at it.
So you have thrown some very good lights, in fact, very good light on so many aspects. So one last thing I would like to ask you before I let you go, sir, is about Captain Little Heart from Britain, since you mentioned about general leadership and a captain leadership. So Captain Little Heart, as you know, sir, he had left the army very soon, and later on he became a military strategist. And then they were generals who would come to him and they would understand from him his mind what he means to say. So a very junior officer like the rank of a captain, where a general used to approach him. Why and how do you think would have happened? What was so different, do you think, about this captain, sir?
I think I missed that first question also. You said, how to differentiate between leadership as a captain and as a general. So see, I would put it this way, that you must look at soldiering as a profession. And it is a profession as broad and deep as, say, medicine or law or any other profession. It is as broad and deep as that, which means that you have to be a lifelong student of soldiering, statecraft, national security, the military dimensions, and wider defense, all these issues. Now, as a second lieutenant, of course, your priorities are different. Your second lieutenant, your priorities are how you lead your platoon, how would you lead your combat team. So you have to be good in those basic combat skills of fieldcraft, shooting, leadership, physical fitness. So they have to be emphasized at that point. But it doesn't mean that as a second lieutenant, once you are done with the chores of the day, when you return to your room, you don't read. You must read with the same passion as a doctor would read or as a lawyer would read. So we must not differentiate, the mistake that we make is by soldiering mein padhna nahi hai. It is absolutely idiotic because it is that soldier who at one time is going to become a brigadier and is going to become a general. And you can't start an adult education camp at that age. It has to be a lifelong process. Of course, as you grow senior, as you grow, say when you become a general, how does it matter whether you can fire your weapon straight? There it matters how you understand statecraft, how you understand the geopolitics of space. You understand China well, because it is in that larger understanding of China will you structure a military response. You cannot be an efficient general if you don't understand politics. Manekshaw said that we are deeply politically conscious, but consciously not politically committed, which is an elevated virtue, that we understand politics, but it's a conscious decision that we will not dabble in it. So you have to have a comprehensive understanding of international affairs, science, technology. See, today, unless you have a fundamental understanding of artificial intelligence, space, so on, you cannot be a good soldier because it's an age of technology. You have to study. Studying or reading, even more than reading the larger wisdom, it has to come from books, from general engagement. These distinctions make a problem. For example, there's a lovely saying: think like a man of action, act like a man of thought. Where is the contradiction? People say tactics, strategy. Let me tell you, which is important both, because strategy without tactics may be the slowest route to victory. Please understand, strategy without tactics may be the slowest route to victory. But
Very well
tactics
said.
without strategy is simply the noise before defeat. If you have tactics and no strategy, you will plod for 3 decades, US in Iraq and Afghanistan. The strategy was all right. Look what happened to them. Let me give you a lovely example from the US Army. The only book I've seen on generalship, by the way, is from Thomas Ricks of the US. He's an American scholar. And he has critiqued generals there. Why don't you write a book on generals in India and critique them? Critique them so that the art of generalship is refined. Now he tells a story from Vietnam. America, once it was gathering its wits from the disaster of Vietnam, they did a comprehensive review, especially the US military. So they said training was not right. There was leadership issues, all kinds of problems, and they attended to them. But when it came to generalship, they said generals were all okay. There was no problem. Except the geosciency of their TEDx, equivalent of our track. He said, no, we must look at generalship. And they reviewed the performance of generals in Vietnam and therefore what corrections they should do. And they said that the higher command equivalent course there, that needed to acquire a strategic tone and tenor because it was too tactical to prepare leaders for the future. Now it is the geosciences, the commandant of the Army War College is of this view, their war college, Karsile or Karlise or someplace. The Army commander of our track was of another view. And the chief of the Army staff was of a view aligned with the commandant. So 2:1. Unluckily or unfortunately, the chief develops cancer, the guy who was backing the commandant. So, and now he's left on his own, and the geosciency track or the TRADOC guy says, no, I just want 100 good battalion commanders, no bloody strategy. This gentleman, Thomas Ricks, goes on to argue that the same guys who were very good colonels and brigadiers, but who in the command and staff college, because they refused to change their whole approach and syllabi, and they said that we just want 100 good battalion commanders. These are the people who rise to man 3- and 4-star positions during Iraq and Afghanistan. And so these 100 good battalion commanders remain battalion commanders. And when it comes to those higher ranks, they lack those qualities of generalship. People like Peter Pace, Tommy Franks, and you study them, they were absolute disasters in the strategic military realm. So you see, it's just like, as a good lawyer, you might begin as an assistant, you begin as a lawyer clerk, but you are learning every day. Initially, you are perhaps just doing the typing and the drafting, but you are absorbing the nuances of law. Similarly, what a, the attributes are the same. At various ranks, you emphasize one and de emphasize the other. But there is no fundamental contradiction. A good soldier must be, of course, physically fit, good in his field craft, good with his weapon. But he must also have an understanding of history, geography, international affairs, science, and technology. Therefore, the finest soldiers have been those who have been very good blends of brain and brawn. Manekshaw, for example, is a very substantive man, very well read. Only, much of his substantiveness and gravitas got masked by the flamboyance of his public demeanor because he was charismatic. So people think it was just that. It was not that. Another general, Sagat Singh, you must read him. Sagat Singh is from the ranks. He goes to a school where he is taught Marwadi. So look at the challenge. He has to graduate from Marwadi to Hindi and then to English. And in those days, if you didn't speak a spattering of English, you had no future in the army. From this background, this man does staff college at two places, has an extremely fine mind, and he is the only soldier we've had who has won every battle that he fought. He was always valorous and victorious. Goa campaign, Nathula 1967, Mizoram, and of course he's the architect of the dash to Dhaka. His dash to Dhaka has been compared by the London Times with the Blitzkrieg. He has been equated with Patton. So he's one of the most successful corps commanders we ever had. Look at his humble beginnings from where he went. Then there is Manekshaw, there is Prem Bhagat, there is Thakur Nathu Singh, S.K. Sinha, soldier, statesman. So we have a very rich legacy, and we've had some of course, outstanding soldiers, very gallant. Zoru Bakshi, what gallantry. He has got a decoration in every appointment, command appointment from company commander to general. Gallantry. So, as I say, our legacy is very rich, wide, and varied. A very proud legacy. And that is exactly what I wanted to say. Our legacy is so outstanding that all we have to do is to live up to it. But in living up to it, it is a huge challenge. So, those are the leaders we need, men of brain and brawn, wit and wisdom, drive and resolve. I mean, these are the normal attributes that, these are the finest attributes that any profession should aspire to, and soldiering is a similar profession. It's one of great challenge, intellectually and physically, and I think still it remains one of the finest careers that any young man can aspire to. Woman also.
Absolutely. Sir, thank you so much for your time, sir. Truly grateful and indebted to you, sir. And you have really given such wonderful insights, invaluable. And I would say you are an encyclopedia of knowledge, sir. And you really made my day. I was so happy, sir, when you had consented to this conversation with me, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Can't thank you enough. Thank you very much,
Great.
sir.
All the best to you and your program. All the best. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind, sir.
Bye.